Good evening. This is the meeting of the Danvers Town Meeting Town Manager Acts Review Committee on November 6, 2024. Welcome, everybody. I had forwarded to everybody in advance of this meeting the minutes of our October 16 meeting to give you a chance to take a look at it before tonight. And one of our jobs tonight is to approve those minutes. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Who was that? Natalie? Any discussion?
Sally, I will abstain since I was not actually here at that meeting to vote on the minutes.
Okay, thanks, Dan. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. So at our last meeting, we had some really good and lively discussion about the Town Meeting Act. And two of the issues we discussed had to do with the number of town meeting members we thought would be a good idea for Danvers. And Dan Gagnon did some really great research on the MMA's website and found charts that show what other communities are doing. Dan, do you want to just kind of give an overview of what they showed you, what these charts indicated to you?
Sure. Sorry I missed our last meeting. I was working, but when I was watching, I was listening to the discussion of these two issues, and I was just kind
Make
of
sure you
thinking.
get the mic.
I was just kind of thinking to myself, oh, I wonder what everyone else does, basically. And so it was right on the MMA website, the number of town meeting members that all the towns with the representative town meetings have, and then the elections, whether they do election first or town meeting first. And so I made them a little Google chart. For the people, the town meeting members per person, I put both the current in green and what was discussed at that meeting in yellow, just as a comparison. And the kind of the one note is on both sides. The town of Saugus is pretty weird. And I did some Googling, and there's a whole bunch of Boston Globe articles. Town charter changes because of embezzlement, corruption. They recalled 4 out of the 5 selectmen at one time. Like, very interesting and maybe not our model. So I thought that was kind of fascinating, but there are outliers on both sides.
So we have here, the first column, of course, is the name of the city or town, and then next, the population, the number of town meeting members, and the number of town meeting members per people. So if we, right now, with our 18 per precinct, we're at 187 people per each town meeting member. And we have a range, and if we were to move to the 12, which we had discussed at our last meeting, that would be 276 town meeting members per people. So we look at this range, and it's a pretty broad range. Any thoughts on that?
First of all, Dan, thanks for pulling this. My first thought was just, what's good about this is that I think the proposed change is not going lower, is not necessarily a major outlier. I mean, it's in terms of the town meeting members per person, 276. It's a little higher than some others, but it's not an extreme outlier, which is good because that was my concern. Like on the surface, it seemed like a good number, but it's helpful to sort of see that we would be in the ballpark of some other towns. And 276 also just seems reasonable for one person to represent. It's a few streets. So that was just my thought. Was it's helpful to sort of be able to contextualize the information.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
Thank you. I've been giving this some thought since our last meeting, and I'm kind of coming down to maybe a midpoint between 18 and 12. And this kind of helps me feel a little better about that, in that this would be either where we sit right now, we're on the upper half of the number of people represented. But, you know, so I don't know that I want to go even higher. But my concern really isn't necessarily about the number of constituents that the town meeting member represents. It's more about the size of the body, and my concern about it where it sits today is that I don't think we have enough interest in the town, in town meeting, to adequately fill those 18 seats. So I think it should shrink some, but I don't know that it should go as drastically as, you know, like a third less by going down to 12. And, you know, sort of the trade-off there is if you don't get it down lower, then you might still be in the position where you don't have enough interest or bodies who are volunteering to run to have, you know, where you might have the same situation that we have today, where we're constantly having caucuses before town meetings to fill those seats. That being said, I think, you know, some of the discussion that you provided in the last couple of meetings about sort of the difficulty or sort of the barrier that people have with elected positions, feeling like if I don't have name recognition, I'm never going to get elected. And if you have a smaller group, I think it's going to become, that barrier might be more difficult to overcome. So I've sort of come down like sort of a halfway position from where we discussed last week, going from 12 to 15. That's what I would prefer at this point.
And of course, it needs to be divisible by 3 because the election cycle is a third are replaced each time. Well, that's an interesting point. Anybody else?
Should, instead of us putting a number of town meeting members, but we do it more based on per person? Or like how many people we represent per town meeting member? So that way it stays, instead of just saying 15 of these people in the actual act, instead of it having a strict number, that it says one town meeting member per 200 people, divisible by 3. Right, then it can change without redoing the act. It can just be a mathematical calculation instead of a set determined number.
What would we be?
Would that change yearly then, according to
Well, it
how
wouldn't,
many people are in?
I don't know if it, because it would still have to be divisible by 3. I was just trying to think if we, because the old one didn't have a set number. It had like 96 or it
As
didn't have
close
a.
as it could be.
Right. So it gave it some leeway instead of just saying 15? I don't know. I'm okay with 15. But I wasn't sure if there should be something.
Well, one thing is the precincts are based on the federal census, which is once every 10 years. And when you think that a town meeting member generally is in there for a 3-year term, I don't know that we could, how we could shorten it to something less than the 10-year
Right.
span.
Right.
But one thing we talked about last time too is how frequently the act should be reviewed. And I had suggested 20 years, saying that would be 2 census.
Right.
But Natalie, I think you were the one that said, no, it should be 10. So with either of those numbers, it would be reviewed more regularly than it has been. So hopefully adjustments could be made as needed.
That's true.
So I just don't know there'd be another mechanism.
Right, yeah, I
Um,
just wasn't sure if we should have a
yeah.
set. But if it, I agree with the 10 years. So I think if it was reviewed that often and they could switch that or.
It could be
change
corrected
It
as
could be corrected,
needed.
yeah.
Okay. And thank you for everybody's, were you going to say something else,
And
Fawn?
oh, I will just say that the Belmont numbers are incorrect, but that's all. The number of town meeting members per person is not correct.
Oh, is my math
Oh, was it? Okay, I
Bad.
thought it was just part of
Yeah,
the
I got
chart.
the two columns
'Cause
and I
I'm-
divided. Did I?
I was looking at
somehow
going,
mess
this,
up.
they can't have 294 and only be 213 people being represented per town meeting members.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. All right, that's my
That's okay.
my clerical error.
Because they had a similar population, so I was like, 294? They have a ton. But
John?
I was just going through the charts and just circling the communities that had about our population, and then looking at the comparison of the number of town meeting members, and then again looking at the final column. And you know, if we were to go to the suggestion of 15, it would bring the number of town meeting members up closer. You know, for example, I'm just running these off down the line: Burlington, Belmont, Walpole, Stoughton. We're around 20. High 20s in their population. So that would bring that up a little bit closer to what most of the towns that are about our size have. So that may be a good yardstick to consider the, you know, the kind of the middle between the 18 and the 12, which puts us pretty close to those other communities.
So just thinking about if we were to reduce it, less people, less opinions, less opportunities for folks in town to have their voices heard. Looking at the numbers too, at 149, we're certainly not like out of the ballpark with high numbers there as well. So I know it's hard to get people more involved in our local community, volunteering, politics, but I would hate to reduce that number, make it harder for folks to get a seat, and then it becomes maybe it's not a necessarily equal voice being heard amongst everyone. That's a thought.
yeah, if we had 15 town meeting members per precinct, we would have 232 residents per one precinct, per one town meeting member.
How many would there be?
232?
If we had how many?
15 per
15.
precinct.
I think I agree with what Mary Beth had said about getting people involved. And in terms of filling seats, I don't have a nice chart like this, but I went through the town clerk's page for my precinct, Precinct 5, because I was thinking to myself, we've never not had a contest, like as long as I remembered. We've never had to fill an open seat. And that was true back to, I don't know if the data on the website went to 2017 or 2016. But at least in my precinct, we've always had a race. We've never had to caucus someone, and we have at special town meetings because like somebody moved out of town or something like that. But never a lack of interest on the ballot. So I mean, at least in that section of town, I don't think any adjustment would be needed for lack of interest. I know that's not every precinct, and I don't have data on every precinct. But at least with us, I kind of didn't see a reason to shrink.
I guess I'd ask, well, again, yeah, not every precinct is the same. My precinct, we've had caucuses.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, mine too.
yeah, and to the extent that there is, you know, that we do fill the seats by elections, I don't know in my precinct that they're contested elections. Like, everybody who's on the ballot gets elected every time, pretty much, in my precinct. So, but again, like, that's part of my concern is, like, why I didn't like the idea of going down to 12 is that, yeah, we'd be losing voices. And even if some of those, like, some of the discussion we've had about this issue is that some of the folks sitting in the room aren't necessarily particularly engaged. You know, we've made the joke about people opening the envelope at the meeting. So, you know, if you shed some of that in the interest of like getting more engaged people to participate, I think there's a balance there. And that's why I thought going down to 12 might be too much. But I think the way things have been in recent years with town meeting and the lack, what I see as the lack of, you know, contested races, the need for caucuses, I think that, honestly, I think we're a little too big for the interest in the town. And that being said, Sally said earlier on in an earlier meeting that this is, and I think this is what you're getting to, like the entry point for a lot of people into town government. I think we can still have that. It's not like I think that if we go to 15, we're going to have all these contested races. I think it's still going to be, you know, a small group of people, as it has been, who are looking for these positions. But even at 15, it's, I think, a low entry, you know, there's not much people need to do to get into the town meeting, even if we go to 15. So that's where I am on that.
I was going to make a similar point because I think there's sort of two issues at play. Like one is the issue of contested seats and filling those seats, and then the other is sort of the engagement. And they're sort of separate but related. And so I kind of agree with you. Like I think we have candidates, but are they truly contested races? And I think so. My initial gut reaction was like, yeah, we could get down to 12, but I think you do make a good point of representation, and I think I would err on the side of wanting to have more voices, especially if one of the goals we've discussed is to get more people into this entry point. I think 15 kind of gives us that sweet spot of maybe we get a couple more contested races, a little more engagement, but it's not dramatically reducing the number, and it's still sort of manageable numbers. I mean, the more we talk about this, 15 sort of could be that sweet spot. And I guess for me, I'm less concerned about, I think these kinds of things, it's always going to be difficult to get people to run, like especially first timers. But I do think the bigger issue people seem to be talking about is just people not being engaged and informed coming into town meeting. Because that, like, on the one hand, you get a diversity of views, but if they're not prepared and well-versed, you know, sort of, I guess, balancing those things out. But I think 12 might be too dramatic, I guess. I would agree with John that maybe 15 is a good, like, midpoint.
Yeah, if it's appropriate, I'd like to make a proposal that we kind of decide this. Looks like 18 is definitely out. It's either 15 or 20. I mean, if there's more discussion, great, but maybe we could kind of nail this and.
I was just going to say the same thing. This is an issue we've talked about, and this is really a helpful chart, Dan. Thanks so much. How about if we take a vote on this? And I would be happy to work it into the kind of that red line draft that we're kind of working towards. So is everybody in agreement we should do it in this way? Go ahead.
Can I make a motion?
Please do.
I would move that we adopt 15 town meeting member per precinct number in the Town Meeting Act revisions that we're talking about.
Dude, I just want to comment, and I feel bad because I know not everyone got a chance to comment.
Yeah, so once the motion is made and seconded, we'll have more time for discussion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Okay, so now, thanks for pointing that out. And it's true, not everybody voiced an opinion on that. Is there more people want to discuss about it?
I'm sorry to do this, Dan. I don't mean to attack or anything. So the math on a few of these is not, like,
Oh,
so.
no.
That's okay.
I'm not the math teacher, I'm the history teacher.
No, but like Swampscott only has 54 town meeting members. It does not have 324.
Oh, yeah, that was the MMA
So this.
data, those
yeah,
columns
yeah,
were
like
copied and pasted.
Oh, on on their website, on Swampscott's website, there are 54 town meeting members. Oh, sorry, pardon me. I'm incorrect. Pardon me. It's per precinct. They have 54 per precinct.
Okay, so that's.
I am
Oh.
With a population of
incorrect.
15,000.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that is, yeah, something we
Okay.
definitely
I-
don't want to do.
I apologize. I was incorrect, I didn't read thoroughly.
54.
54 per precinct.
No,
18 members are
I'm
elected
good with
each
the
year.
motion, so I don't have anything to add to that.
Yep, I feel good about it too.
Okay.
No, I obviously do not have any more to comment.
Mary Beth, have you,
Oh, I already said.
you're all set? So shall we vote?
Yes.
All in favor of the motion to adopt a 15 town meeting member per precinct number in our proposed revisions to the Town Meeting Act? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I might dissent and vote no on that one.
No on the 15?
I have a question, just thinking about how our recommendations will be presented and that we might need to back it up with our reasoning. should we, sort of as we're going along, since we've now taken sort of an official vote, if you will, to make a change, should we, at the same time, should we or do we feel it's useful to take a minute to write down our rationale in real time, that we feel that it's based on optimizing engagement? I don't know, do we feel like we need to do that, or do you think that will be easy to put together once we've sort of completed the work?
Well, that's a good question, because what I envision we'll do is present something like the red line versions that we've done, and it's going to be covering so many issues, but, so it's kind of hard to tell, well, what will our report actually look like? And we'll deal with the town meeting act attached as the revisions we recommend, and then we could go through the points as to why we've made the recommendations. So yeah, so what do you all think?
I think that we'll present it, and there may be a few people who will actually read it, and they may actually have some points, and then depending on the point, you may be able to answer, because I see you as the head point in the whole thing, and then maybe there is someone who has a particular thing that they presented, that you would defer that explanation to that particular person. If you can handle it, fine. I don't think there's necessity to go through every single point we've changed. I think takes a lot of time in town meeting. You know, if they don't read it and scrutinize it, then I think that's what you're supposed to be doing. That's your job.
Well,
That's
of
the whole
course.
reason for making it 15.
Of course, just 1 minute, Noah and John, I did ask the moderator a little bit about what process will be, and I included her email in response, but basically what we'll be doing is making a report to the select board about our ideas, our proposed revisions, and they can accept them or not, and if they do, they would refer them to the finance committee for review, and then it would be before town meeting. And then, once town meeting votes, I guess at that point, it is sent to the state legislature as a home rule petition.
So if I may, Sally, to your point, let's say in that process, there were someone who had a question on one of the points, I would assume that you would probably be the person to answer that, unless you want to defer. Would that be correct?
I think that that's fine, and also I'm thinking other like big pieces of revisions that come before town meeting tend to be like the zoning bylaw or the Historic District Commission recently. And I think that our product can be presented and then a highlight sheet of some of the highlights of the changes.
Yeah.
And this would probably be one. So, and it could be kind of in summary fashion at that time. But Noah, you had something to say?
Yeah, just you, and you're actually, what was I was going to say. I don't think we have to explain everything, but I think highlights would be good. I think something like this where we're reducing the representative body, I think is,
Worthy of.
people are owed an explanation, because we are essentially saying fewer people will be represented at a town meeting. We have good reasons why we're doing that. We think it will increase engagement, et cetera. But I think that's one of those things where I think being a proactive and transparent in the explanation, I think, is important.
Yes, I agree. And actually, it's not that I'm just trying to think something you just said. We're not,
reducing, but yeah.
but we're not reducing
Right.
the number of people represented. It's still the same group. We're just reducing the number of representatives.
Yes, thank you.
And our goal, as you said, is that we feel this would increase engagement. Thank you. And John Almeida, you had something too?
Yeah, it kind of following off that, you know, we talked earlier, at earlier meetings, about some non-act ideas that we had about sort of getting town meeting more engaged, town meeting members more engaged. And so I was thinking of something more like a report that hits on some of that stuff as well. Like here are the recommendations, and like highlighting the more substantive ones as opposed to, you know, changing, capitalizing, stuff like that. But like the more substantive ones, here's our explanation for why we're recommending it. But then maybe a section on statutory changes that we have discussed. You know, that, you know, this isn't really, but, you know, as we've talked about it earlier, I think it is worthy of, like, these are the things that we talked about and thought about, like putting them in written format so the selectmen have it, so that the town meeting members have it when they go to the meeting, so they understand where we're coming from with this. Because, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be hard to present all of this in, you know, even if it's a special town meeting, it's going to take some time. So if people can digest stuff beforehand, I think that's better.
And John,
You think it's the
Yeah,
appropriate time? One of the things that we had talked about early on was the engagement of the town meeting members. We talked about an education forum. We had a number of things we talked about, and the whole consciousness was that we want to have the town meeting members feel more responsibility for what they do. And then the flip side of that coin is to be better representatives of their precinct. So I did float this idea at one time about possibly having some sort of, caucus is probably not a good word, because caucus means, but maybe it could, that, and I'll just pass this around, it's not really, the wording is not really essential, all right? What is essential is the idea. And this may cover the issues of the town meeting member taking some responsibility for the importance of the job, and also giving the precinct members an opportunity to meet with and meet is the word, to meet with their precinct town meeting members, and then to be able to share their thoughts. It's a vehicle, basically. And I know that all of us definitely seem to value the idea of we would like to give our citizens here in Danvers more of a voice, more of an avenue to get their ideas out there and get them to the right places. And that's part of the second point of that, and that's why the timing is really critical. And it's general, because I don't know the calendar, or I don't know anything about that, but I think it's at least simple enough so you all see what's behind it, and I throw it out there for some discussion. It may speak to the point that's brought up about would like to add, and it is an add to the town meeting member, something like this. And this is kind of funny. I went to the Rockwell Museum over the vacation, and you're all probably familiar with this picture.
Yeah.
Right, which is a classic of the four truths of FDR. I don't think this farmer probably stood up in 1930, you know what I mean, and had his voice. I think those times are gone, and therefore my point in sharing it with you is there needs to be given the times, there needs to be another vehicle for citizens to be able to get their ideas in the right places, rather than what this guy did.
Oh, I was speaking to someone, remember earlier on we were dealing with the whole issue of, should we change our form of government to a city format? And somebody was talking to me about that issue at the time, outside of a meeting. And she was saying that in a city that she's involved with, she's attended the night where, like, after an election, where maybe the mayor and the new city council members and other people who've just been elected are, like, sworn in. And it's a whole, like, ceremony that the whole city or town is invited to. It's like, it's kind of this occasion. And so I was thinking, and John's writing here reminded me of this idea that perhaps at some point, and I'm not sure where in the calendar it would be, there should be a time when all new town meeting members, all new select board members, any new department heads or chiefs of departments are all sworn in or celebrated in some way at a meeting that's maybe at the high school or some central place that everybody in town can come to. And there's kind of town days already, I think. Like there's the day that people can go to the fire department, but there's days to go to the DPW. And maybe there's already an all-town day that I'm just not thinking of. But to have some sort of event that's celebratory of the town and the leadership, the governance of the town, and at whatever that gathering is, to also provide, if it's an outdoor thing, separate little pop-up tents or a separate room in the high school for each precinct to gather if they'd like to. But I think it would be a grand idea to have some formal event that reflects this stuff that we've been talking about.
If I may add too, one of the issues I remember us talking about was, how do you present this to the town meeting member? And I just wrote some words. Do we recommend? Do we advise? Do we encourage? Do we suggest? Would you please consider? So I was kind of juggling all those words. And you might want to write this down, and any of those other words if you think they were good. But I think I settled on something like responsible to conduct. In other words, I think it puts a little bit of onus on them, but it doesn't necessarily say that you must.
Mandatory.
And can you say it again, John?
I didn't put that on there, but that was the wording. Again, this is all completely up to discussion. I just throw it out there and see how our brainstorming
But
goes.
what was the wording that you had?
Responsible to conduct.
That they're responsible to conduct a precinct meeting?
Yes. Or whatever we want to call it.
I like that.
Okay.
You said a question, John, with the second.
Go ahead.
Again, John, your mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. With the second bullet on town meeting members meet the same day and time at DHS, is your intent that that's a standalone thing, or is that the day of town meeting?
No, that would be a standalone
Okay.
thing, trying to maximize the attendance and the ability of voters to have time to get that, to have the town meeting members get the information they've received from the precincts, to get them to the boards. So again, that's basically a calendar issue, I think.
I'm curious, have any of you ever had constituents in your precinct reach out with any, John, especially all the years that you've been in, have you ever had anybody reach out?
Well, the only one I recall was a couple of years back, there was a proposal to, like store some waste at Pope's Landing, and my precinct went bananas, and there were, meetings to discuss that. But that wasn't really, I don't know that was constituent-driven or town meeting member-driven, But that's the only one that comes to mind for me since I've been on the.
We had CPA
Oh.
emails, I think, the
Yeah.
last time it was on the ballot. We had people emailing, wanting to know how we were voting for that, because they were against the CPA.
Right.
That's oh, it just went out of my head, the CPA stands for.
Community Preservation Act.
And I got some with the trash barrels, with that, when there was going to be a fee for trash barrels.
So, that's good. That's what people should be doing, right?
Yeah.
And I guess the thought behind this was that it's good to hear that when we get hot button issues in town, that people are going to find a voice. This whole idea was to give the people the voice, whether there's a hot button issue or not.
Right?
So I just have a quick comment and then a question. Well, I really love the idea, again, getting back to what Mary Beth was talking about earlier with diversity of voices and opinions. I think this is a way, I'm always in favor of giving people more chances to speak out, especially to their elected officials, and I think that this is a good way to do it, especially if it's a regular thing and people know where it is. It just makes it easier, because people might not feel comfortable about sending an email to someone they don't know or whatever it might be, so this is a good way to do it. I guess the question I had, more of a process question, is this doesn't really say who is responsible for organizing and administering this. Is this the town clerk? Is it precinct? So I think that probably needs to be included, because otherwise it just becomes sort of a generic thing that no one takes ownership of. So I don't know if there's any thought on that.
Yeah, actually, my wife brought that up to me. The thought would be that there would be something as we get for snow times when the snow plows are coming or whatever, that would come out from town hall that this is the day that whatever we call it would be occurring at Danvers High School. So everybody in town would get a message, and then they decide whether it fits into their life and whether they want to go or not. And I don't think that's a big heavy lift at all, from what I gather, because we all know we get those messages.
Would the idea be to time this event after town meeting members had received their packet with all the warrant articles that were coming on board, to have an opportunity to also discuss those with the people in their precinct? Or is it really designed to sort of just be a sounding board opportunity?
I would say one of the key thoughts I had on this was that you'd want to have this meeting so that at that meeting, whatever came up could be then brought to the appropriate boards before there was something going to the town meeting as a warrant article. You know, so it wouldn't be discussion of the warrant article, but you know, because I think that's the frustration, you know what I mean? The warrant article goes out, people finally read it, they're all upset about it. If you can get the voice before the warrant article is established, then I think you've serviced the population and the voters would give much more of an opportunity to get their point across.
Does it need to be before the budget discussions?
Pardon?
Do you think it needs to be before, during the budget discussions?
Yeah, I-
Which are,
That's- I leave that open to,
yeah,
I have
Right.
no,
but I don't know what people, yeah.
Right, so budget discussions are starting now.
Right.
So you would either do summer, early fall, and then to your point, who would be responsible? I think precincts have precinct captains that the town moderator appoints,
They're appointed at town meeting for that town meeting.
just for that town meeting?
Yeah, not for.
Because it could be if you had a precinct captain appointed for that town meeting and then their precinct captain till the next one, then they could work in conjunction with the town clerk to coordinate this type of meeting, because you'll need to work with other departments to secure the space and get notification out. So that's kind of how,
Precinct
I
captain
would
for
say
a
it.
year, that's, yeah.
just, they did used to do precinct meetings prior to, like, someone, I don't know if they were the captain or someone took leadership or ownership of doing that and coordinating a precinct meeting. And I'm talking probably, I want to say somewhere in the maybe mid to late 90s when they were doing that. I believe Bill Bates would probably have that information, having been a precinct member for a while. But I know that they were doing that because I recall there being conversations about it. But
Was it just for town meeting members, or was it also for?
no, it would be like
Public,
anyone in your precinct.
Gotcha, yeah.
We're meeting at my house. Come on by for coffee and let's talk about the issues. So.
Yes.
We've talked about changing the date of the town election, and I think we want to coordinate what we're talking about here with that, because potentially, like, kind of the cycle that we know it now, it might not, like, it might make sense that we do it after the election, early in the year, well, yeah, because it would be like after the town meeting, so early in the town government year, and before anything has really taken form, like you're concerned that, people don't, something's already a warrant article, they've missed their chance, kind of. So somehow, I guess what I'm thinking is that this needs to be coordinated with that other question, like if we're going to change the town election date, and then we figure this out based on that.
Maybe something broad to think of, such as after annual town meeting, after the election of town meeting members, but before the next annual town meeting, which kind of leads us to the next discussion, which is the issue of timing. Like right now, the town elections are just 2 weeks before the annual town meeting, and we've talked about switching that so that I thought I'd made a proposal, maybe it was in the manager act. I found some language that talked about, I believe right now, the election, the town election is the first Tuesday in May. And then town meeting is the third Monday in May. So it's only a couple of weeks. So we talked about switching that out. Have the annual town meeting take place. using town meeting members who were elected months earlier, and then have an election for new town meeting members after the annual town meeting. And Dan, you did a chart too, talking about dates of these meetings. Can you tell us a little bit about what your chart shows?
Well, leaving aside Sagas, who's on their own page again, most of them, they're all, other than that, in the spring, and the yellow are the only ones that do the election after town meeting. So the white would be roughly our current schedule. Now, I mean, I should say current order. They have varying numbers of weeks. Usually, several of them are a full month between election and town meeting, or town meeting and election. They definitely have more than the 2-week gap that we do.
Yeah, like Dartmouth has a couple of months difference.
It seemed that our discussion, I mean, maybe that would solve the problem we're trying to deal with, which is new town meeting members don't really have much time to learn about the budget and be able to make effective votes at town meeting. So I don't know if just changing it by a couple of months would do it, or if flipping the order is what would do it. So like, for instance,
Yeah, so that we have the annual town meeting, and then a few weeks later, we have an election, and then those town meeting members have almost a full year to get up to speed.
I think that makes the most sense, because realistically, if you only have the election just a few more weeks before town meeting, then all the other initiatives that we've talked about, like encouraging them to come in for training or having some sort of virtual online training, all those things have to be happening in those people's lives who have other lives in a very short period of time. And I think that might discourage some people from getting involved, because that 4 to 6 weeks before the meeting is going to be pretty intense.
plus the in terms of budget stuff, that's going on more than just in April of each year. Backs up further than that. So one idea I had, and this actually would fall in the Town Manager Act, is that the elections be held, I'm just kind of made these dates up to just kind of get started, that the elections would be held the third Tuesday in June, and annual town meeting would stay the third Monday in May. So we'd have town meeting mid to late May, and then about a month later, have the election for town meeting members for the next annual town meeting.
One thought is, do we want to have, well, I guess schools, never mind. I was thinking July, ignore me. I was thinking I was thinking summer, and do we want to have a summer election, but schools are still in session in June, so ignore me.
No, I'm with you. I think that it should all be maybe shifted a month earlier than that. That like our election, that our town meeting is in April, and then the election is in May. I don't know, late June seems late, just because it's June. And I don't know how many people are voting in June.
Well, maybe they don't have to be a month apart.
Yeah,
Maybe just the
because it
gap
doesn't
could be
really
narrowed.
matter.
'Cause
If we switch it, it doesn't really
Right.
matter.
I'm just willing to bet that there's a reason that they chose the town meeting date, and that might be
Yeah.
harder to change, but I could be wrong about that.
I have a comment.
Please.
Okay. So when folks are interested in running for town meeting, papers are available in February. So they take papers out, they get their signatures, they have about a month. So they've already been thinking about running for town meeting. So if you're already thinking about it in February and March, you're somewhat, I would assume, aware that the budget's going on. Then there's FinCom meetings that are happening in April, end of March. I mean, there are opportunities for people to gather the information that's being presented at town meeting, so that when they get elected, beginning of May, and they come on to the town meeting, they should have some background already in the real world. I'm not sure, even if you were to move the election to after the town meeting and you got new town meeting members, that you still wouldn't have that. We show up at the meeting and we open the envelope when they're there. I'm just playing devil's advocate. I understand. We would hope that our current town meeting members whose terms are not up are engaged in either watching the meetings or reading about them or going to the meetings prior to town meeting. But again, in the real world, that's not always happening either. So with that being said, I'm not sure changing our voting day to be after really helps for the next year. Maybe it's spaced out. Maybe the election is a month before town meeting. But again, I mean, I'm not really sure it's going to make a huge difference in what we think would be happening. That's just really all.
Well, I will say that for me, when I started to run for town meeting member, I had zero idea as to what went on. And the reason I got involved was so that I would learn what was going on. So when I went to my first town meeting, I had zero clue as to what happened or what I was, because there is no training. You just pull papers, get some signatures, and they go, okay, you're on the ballot. Because there was no contested things for precinct one when I ran. So I got in with like hardly any votes. And I just kind of showed up and was like, okay, I guess. And then I learned just by going but yeah, first town meeting, I had no clue what was happening.
Exactly the same for me.
Isn't
Yeah.
there,
Me too.
they do have a training class, right? I mean, we get
It's-
notice every year, but I think.
It's not.
Yeah, oh, okay.
I mean,
Well-
yes, they do,
Yeah.
but it's not like.
I didn't go to it, so I didn't.
Well,
I'm
It's not-
ones that did go to
Yeah.
it, so,
It teaches you about town meeting,
Right.
but not anything before
So,
that.
and so we would still be in the same situation unless we had something similar to what John's saying. But for folks that are watching that have interest in running for town meeting, the town clerk is a huge resource to say to any of the elected running, like, what do these do? And if she doesn't have the answer, she certainly does direct you in the right location. But I understand what you're saying as well, and I know that's what majority of folks do. But I guess the information is out there for the public. But again,
But you have to know where to look. Yes.
Yeah, I understand your perspective and where you're coming from, but I think what I'm seeing is maybe we set up the institution, like the elections and sort of the informal things that we're talking about here, so that it's not, like, I think the way it is now makes it really hard for someone to get. It makes it much less likely that a new member is going to walk into the room with anything,
Right.
more understanding than you had.
Yeah.
But if we set things up in this way and we combine it with some of the things that we're talking about in terms of encouraging people to, engage with their fellow town meeting, and maybe after the election, like a packet comes to a prospective town meeting member with,
Yes.
hey, these are the dates, this is when the budget starts happening, stuff
Right.
that I never
No.
got. So, I mean, I think that if we think about our task maybe more as not just amending the act, but like what can we do in terms of the report, maybe that softer, informal stuff would, combined with stuff that we're talking about, like changing dates, might make it more likely that there would be a difference.
One thing I remember we talked about when this initially came up too is sort of the idea of one of the logics behind switching was also that making the election after the town meeting is that if the members of your precinct were very upset over a vote at town meeting, they could hold you accountable for that vote, versus maybe it being a year later and people not maybe remembering the details, which again, I think ties into what you were talking about, John, that, people can hold you accountable. Maybe during one of those sessions they can ask, well, I noticed you voted in favor of this. What was your reasoning, et cetera? Because I agree with you. I don't think it's just moving it. That on its own, I think, maybe doesn't do it. But I think if we build up some of these things around it to increase the engagement, that could do it. The more I think about it, I think it does become sort of a challenge of the best way to optimize that schedule.
Yeah, because even if we, the idea that I tossed out, have an election the third Tuesday or some point in June for the following May's town meeting, somewhere between being elected and the meeting actually happening, a town meeting member, it's such a long stretch. You know, they may not have done anything. They may have kind of forgotten. I don't know. What do you think, Dan?
In terms of the accountability, I was thinking about the order in that sense. And while I do think, yes, that's definitely accountability if you have the election only a couple weeks after town meeting, it depends on the issue, I'm sure, but it's kind of too late. Whereas if you have the election first, the warrant is already public information. And so you're picking people to vote on those articles. You already know the agenda, you know what issues are there, and you could ask candidates ahead of time, what do you think about X or what do you think about Y? If the election's afterwards, like, well, it's already voted on, you can vote them out, but
Well-
like, it's already decided.
But the warrant articles are not, the period of time is so condensed. You know, FinCom deals with them, and then warrant articles are sent to town meeting members kind of as quickly as they're available. And a town meeting member, would you say we get them maybe a week before town meeting, right?
Maybe,
So it's usually just one weekend in between getting them and the town meeting, which I've typically used to prepare. So it's not like there's a big, long period of time.
In that sense, the selectmen at least have decided what they're putting on the warrant at the beginning of April. It's not final, it doesn't have the recommendations, but their public meeting is at the beginning of that month. So there's at least a solid month of this is at least potentially the agenda. Yeah, sometimes there's one or two X'd at the last minute that don't actually make it to town meeting. But there's sort of at least an idea of what are the issues on the table, or what could be the issues on the table.
So you're saying that somehow people in the town will know what that is, so that they can ask candidates how they view those? Because it's all public record now, and nobody does that.
Yeah.
Well, but that's because they're not doing that. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily because it's being hidden and the information isn't there. People are just not engaged to looking for it at that particular moment until it's a week out, and then they're like, what? I mean, again, we're not, anything that we recommend or try to have instituted isn't really necessarily going to change the engagement of the community to get to know what's going on. I mean,
It's more fun to complain about things
I-
afterwards than.
I will
I
say,
mean-
oh, sorry,
I-
go ahead.
I'm not saying that, I think these are great recommendations. Do I think that these are,
Gonna change
gonna change the mindset and how people react, even as far as if they have the time or not? Well, you have the time if you wanna make the time for things, so, I just, I don't know.
Yeah. I will say, right now, with the way it's set up, the one thing I don't agree with, and I would love to see the election after, is because if you are a town meeting member, and it doesn't really, we don't really run in contested races, so it doesn't matter that much. But if you are a town meeting member that puts in time before the annual town meeting, going to budget meetings, going to FinCom, and then you get voted out right before the annual town meeting, you have knowledge of the warrant articles that is no longer useful if you get voted out, if the election is before the town meeting. And so you lose, I don't know, some kind of expertise when it comes to actually voting during
So you
town
got a
meeting.
campaign.
But
Yeah.
Chris, I suppose, but I mean, I can tell you, in the 21 years I was on the finance committee, I used to make a note of how many people were present in the room besides the committee and the department heads that were reporting to us. And
Right.
if there were 4 people, it was a lot. But I know people can watch it too, so
Right.
one concern I have about us talking so cavalierly, I guess, about changing the election date, the election of town meeting members also occurs, the other things are voted on at that time too. Select board members and library trustees, school committees, all of that stuff. Yeah, so it's not, I don't know how easy it would be to pick out the town meeting member elections as becoming separate now. And I don't know that it's really possible. So maybe the answer isn't so much to pursue the timing of the elections versus annual town meeting, maybe the focus has to be on how to increase interest and engagement and preparation. I don't know what the answer is.
I mean, you could move.
Raising the bar a little bit, you know, by having these meetings and sort of using that term of responsible to conduct, right? So, yeah, like raising the bar.
Am I hearing this correctly, that what you said, Sally, is to keep the town meeting in its location? And I think we're talking about switching the election time, is that?
I don't know what we're.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
So it looks like it's either we keep it where it is, or we move it to sometime in June, and sounds like there's been, some pluses and minuses
Right.
about it. Am I hearing that right? Is that it?
Go ahead.
Yeah, the last point you made, Sally, about town elections aren't just town meeting members, and I don't know that we would want to have multiple town elections, one for town meeting members, one for selectmen, one for, so I guess maybe it's a bigger question, like what, if we were to change the date, how would that be a plus or a minus for school committee? Would that be a plus or a minus for selectmen? And, that's, I don't know the answer to that. Like, I don't know the cycle of the school committee. Is it like, okay, they're summer vacation, like, is it like school, like where that's a good time for them to have a clean break as opposed to in May?
They're elected at the same time town meeting
Yeah.
members are.
Yeah, like, is it better for them? Is
Oh.
that, is there a reason, like, is there a reason for
It being when it is.
it being when it is, right? For, not necessarily for town meeting, but for one of the other elected positions?
I could ask the town clerk.
Well, Mary Beth, you were on the school committee. What do you think?
What was that, like, what were you?
Like, is the election in May good or bad for the schedule of, the cycle of the town, of a school committee?
I would say it's a good time because school's coming to an end and then schools, the new school year starts up. School's coming to the end in June and then July 1, that's when they start getting ready for the next year. So a lot of times the school committee wouldn't meet in July. I mean, I think they do now, but in the past, they would take July off. And then they would meet again early August. So they would get everything done in May and June prior to taking July off. And then school starts more or less in the August, September timeframe. I'm just curious where we're talking about this, the election and all. So these would be amendments to the Town Meeting Act? Or is this like an addition? Like, are we adding this?
Well, it's both. I mean, I envision that we'll hand them something like this redlined version. These are the changes we're recommending, so it's really revising the act. And if,
Right.
but in the course of doing that, we add a couple sentences or a section here or there.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if changing up when the town election is and town meeting dates, if that's, I guess, appropriate of the looking and amending this.
Yeah, that's the Town Manager Act has those dates, right? Didn't we?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so that, but again, that's are we amending it to say that, or is this a change? We're trying to stay on task for what we're tasked to do.
And I don't know that we can really control the election dates
Right.
much, or the annual town meeting
Yeah,
date,
it's-
because they're set for reasons that are kind of beyond the scope of what we're doing. And to try to have a whole separate election for town meeting members would probably be pretty cost prohibitive. Each election there's quite an expense involved. So it might be kind of, maybe what I should do is pose the question to the town clerk, just to ask about why they're set up on the dates and in the order they are now, and if it'd be possible for us to change it, and maybe we should just put that issue aside till
Yeah.
another time.
Yeah, because I do think there are reasons for that, from having talked to her, but I can't recall that at this moment.
And maybe just even that they also receive, when they pull papers, maybe they also just receive a packet of some kind of informational thing of like what this is, what's available to you to get information about it, or, because you don't need any of that. You just
Like
can-
when FinCom meets and, you know,
Right,
what
right,
meetings you
right.
can attend. I
This
remember
bud-
thinking that they were probably closed meetings, and of course I could have asked, but it didn't
You
occur
just
to me
don't-
to
yeah.
ask.
Yeah, no.
To kind of close my circle that I presented, in light of what we've just talked about, when do you see that, if we decide to do it, that this kind of precinct gathering would be most efficient? Just thoughts on that. I definitely don't see it in the spring or anytime. I see it moving past the summer, and then I don't know, when all these boards are meeting and when they're starting to discuss stuff. So I think that, I'm just curious.
Yeah, when the
Like
budget,
now.
would
when
think
budget season
this
starts.
time of year.
September,
Right, right.
September, October, no later than the end of November. I mean, they're already starting the
talking.
process.
Yeah, I wouldn't say September. It feels like a busy month for people.
Okay, yeah, no,
Yeah, I
so,
don't
yeah,
know.
you're
I'm
thinking
just-
more, excuse me, so I was thinking more like latter part of October, early November, is
Yeah,
that where you'd probably
that's where I'm
plug that in?
thinking, yeah.
Okay, good, I just want to get a sense of that.
Yeah,
Thank-
that's
Yeah, okay,
my
good.
guess, but, yeah, the first budget meetings are December.
Sally, if I
Go ahead.
As far as the process question I think you had raised, I don't know that this is appropriate to be in the Town Meeting Act. I think this is something that we might bring as a recommendation and try to figure out how we do it as a town, as opposed to putting it in the statute.
Yeah.
So that, just like, that's my view on the process of this.
I was just gonna, sorry, just quick thought. I've been sort of going back and forth on this, and at the risk of going off on a tangent, but I was just thinking about, I think at the root, what we're dealing with is a civic engagement problem. And part of the reason why there's low civic engagement is that there's not a lot of information. Like as a joke, I was like, well, we don't even have a newspaper, but like, we don't have a newspaper, and it's hard for people to find out what's going on. And I'm not sure that moving the election substantively changes that civic engagement problem. It doesn't provide more information to people. I think something like this does, but I think, and the reason I am leaning towards maybe this becomes part of a recommendation is I think if we're going to go that route, we could perhaps come up with a series of recommendations around communication and outreach, because to your point, things are available in early April for people to review before the election, but people just, they don't know. Maybe they don't know to go to the website. They don't know where to find it. So just, again, this is probably beyond the scope of what we're doing, but if we're going to put recommendations together, I think it would be strong to say a proposal to add these meetings, recommendations on outreach, distribution, et cetera, because I think that's, like, I feel that as a resident that sometimes I have to work to find information. And if you're in a community, if we had a local newspaper, that might be in the local newspaper, it might be easier to find. So I'm just thinking that moving the election dates might not solve that problem for us, but creating a better information ecosystem would, so.
If I may just respond, I kind of thought a little bit about that, not that I'm pushing for that, but this whole thing came out of our concern of creating something, and as a recommendation, it's recommended. Well, okay, thank you. I felt it should be part of the act. And the other aspect of it that I thought about is that it is, if we use the wording, I suggested, what was the wording I used there? Responsible, right. If all of a sudden 10 precinct members show up at room 202 at the high school and there is no town meeting member there, I think there may be a few ramifications of that. So there's that other reason why trying to make it a little more serious without saying you must do it, that there's that accountability to your precinct, that at least somebody better be there, and it may not be all, that's fine, and then people can decide, but if no one shows, or those who show have actually enhanced their commitment to the precinct. So that's why, if you ask me to, make the decision, I would probably put it in whatever section of the Town Meeting Act that is most appropriate.
I think if we're going to bother, yes. I think if we're going to bother doing this, then I also agree that it should be in the act to make it more.
Part of your duty.
Yes, not mandatory, as we said, but
Right.
part of your, yes, yeah. Not just, you could do this if you want, yeah.
Yeah, if I could offer a contrary view, I don't know that putting something that's voluntary and not mandatory in the statute makes sense. I just don't think that makes sense. that's the kind of thing that we could do as a town and make it, you know, sort of a cultural thing, but I don't know that it makes sense to put something, and I don't know that the legislature would be receptive to it. Like, what is this
Yeah.
voluntary
But there's
thing?
language like that in there already. You know, they may meet from time to time, they may adjourn occasionally. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but
Yeah.
the language is in there that's sort
Well,
of
I-
suggestive and I think opens the opportunity for people to do this.
Yeah, yeah, I
If
know,
the
I think,
opportunity is there, and this, I think, just sort of, I don't know if codifies the word, is the right word, but it sort of more specifically says, this is what perhaps they might, maybe they should be meeting for this purpose. But I think it's already, there are always sort of some vague,
yeah,
language in there.
I read that language as giving the authority, like, you're not prohibited from meeting outside of the confines of a town meeting. That's how I read that. And that this is like, would be an acceptable way to exercise that authority.
I personally am in favor of, sorry, I'm touching your papers now, of providing a specific example of how town meeting
That's-
members could
Like maybe.
interpret that language, which I found sort of nebulous and I didn't know what they meant. Obviously, it gives permission, but this is perhaps why you should consider doing that.
So like an RE, this, like you can get together from time to time, for example, blah,
Right.
blah, blah.
This is, you know,
Yeah,
whatever the wonderful
so
words are.
it could be put in that way, to give us a suggestion as to how they could gather. And
To
still
your
wouldn't be
point,
mandatory.
there's no
but-
teeth to it,
That-
but I don't see
that was
that
my
as a reason.
question.
I don't
yeah.
see that as a reason to exclude it.
But I guess that was my question. This is maybe it's not an issue, but if we put it in there and it's just ignored, I guess that's that's okay. There's no consequence to that. Because I guess I'm sort of really in between this, and I see both sides. Because on the one hand, I think there's value in putting it in there and saying this is a standard, but then if it doesn't have any teeth, what's the motivation to? Because you know what I mean? Like it's sort of, well, this would be good to do, but if no one, and that's why I kind of originally brought the point of responsibility and ownership. I think that would need to be more specific in terms of who does it or who takes responsibility, so that there at least would be a mechanism for someone to go to, let's say it's the precinct captains, and say, hey, you're my precinct captain. When's our annual meeting at the high school or something like that? That's why I think it might be good to have a little more specificity if we're going to go that route. But I see both sides. This is,
I think that seems appropriate, and that perhaps the precinct captain, I don't know if this is possible, but instead of just being appointed for the purposes of that meeting, could have some sort of role on an annual basis.
Like Mary Beth said, for a year, our precinct captain is appointed for the year.
And-
From one meeting to the next, until the next meeting, and someone else is appointed.
And I
And
think,
they are responsible for conducting a meeting of their precinct.
So would this be like in section 13 area?
Before we get to that level, let me just discuss something, because don't forget it.
yeah.
So no, don't forget the question.
Yeah.
And I also have at least two other matters that
Okay.
deal with the Town Meeting Act that I want to bring up.
Yeah,
But
me too.
I am concerned. Let me just write down that last idea.
Sure.
That we talk and talk about all of our ideas. And so far, we have taken one vote on one issue within the two acts. I'm getting concerned, we're just spinning. And I'm sure you're feeling that way too. And the Board of Selectmen has asked me to come and report to them tomorrow night about what we're doing, what we've done so far. And I know they would like to have our report by sometime in February.
Oh, February.
And so I think we need to get moving here.
I thought we had a year,
The-
if we wanted, oh.
Yeah, I mean, and we could ask for more time too. I've been assured of that,
Right.
but, they need to deal with things in February to get them on the warrant for May,
The town, oh, I see.
okay?
Well,
No, so yeah, let me just finish the
yeah.
whole thought, the whole
Yeah.
thought. So I want us to get going. And I see a couple of ways to do it. One, should we be meeting weekly? Somebody asked me why we're meeting every other week, and I'm like, are you kidding? This is hard work. But somebody was like, suggesting we should be meeting more often. Second is this, I had done up this red line thing for the Town Meeting Act, and what I could do, and actually Matt Kachuk forwarded to me his additions to that, as did John, John Almeida, which is very helpful. One idea I had is, if anybody else has specific language they would like to be considered in here, one idea is maybe if you send it to me, I could generate a new red line version. I don't know how, I'm not tech savvy enough to say, okay, the red is my comments, and the blue is John Almeida, and the green is John Dwyer. But at least something that then we could go through section by section, yes, no, and get this act done. Because then we got the town manager act, but it's big, but our job in the town manager act is fairly small. We know there's two issues in particular of interest. One is the residency requirement, and the other is whether the town accountant, that word should be in the one section it is in, or should be in another section, and whether the newly named position, what is it, director of finance, should be added in there somewhere. So it's really just, it's a pretty narrow couple of questions. I don't think we're going to be making as many, proposing as many changes to that act as we are to this one.
You don't think that we're supposed to kind of be going through what we think the town manager should be appointing and what should be elected, or?
Yeah, that's,
I don't think so. I mean, the town manager is hired, appointed by the select board, and is responsible for all those positions.
right, but isn't that a recommendation that we were supposed to say whether the town manager had too much
Power.
power, I guess is how they worded it.
Yeah.
So that was my only, in going through, doing the homework of going through the Town Manager Act, really the only couple of questions I had were just a couple of the sections for wondering, like, why was there sole power on a couple of things? But other than that, I mean, the Town Manager Act to me was pretty cut and dry.
Well, can we just start with section 1
Of what?
of the Town Meeting Act? And
Sure.
just say, like, what do we think? And
I-
just vote, and like,
I
this-
thought we,
No,
yeah, started.
Not trying to be but
yeah.
I think maybe I did the wrong assignment. I thought my assignment was to go through the Town Meeting Act.
Yes.
And then pick out anything that would be additions
Right.
to what you gave, and I've only got 3 questions in the entire act.
I don't have any in,
Of what act?
Of the Town Meeting, I only
The
have 3
Town Meeting
questions.
Act?
I only have 3 questions, and
Yeah.
they're not really big changes, I just said questions, that's it.
yeah, I
I'm
don't have
done.
anything in section 1. I don't have anything
So
other than
are
what
you looking
wrote.
at the red line version that had my
Yes.
proposed
Yeah,
changes
I
to
mean,
it?
it's blue, but yes.
Yeah. So do you guys want to do that and go through, like, we're just not kind of getting anywhere, I guess is what I'm
Because
trying
I
to say.
think, I think that's
Yeah.
what we should be doing.
Yeah, so section 1.
Anybody opposed to that concept?
Nope.
So let's begin with the town.
Okay, wait a minute, let me find mine, it's in here.
I know I had to go through the stack, it's getting.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
guy's getting
no,
me.
I know.
All right, where are we?
Trees.
Where's mine? All right, go ahead, you can start, I'll catch up.
Okay, so Town Meeting Act with the red changes that I suggested, section 1. Does anybody have any questions?
This is just sort of throughout the document, whether we capitalize representative town meeting members, just for consistency's sake. And some confusion I have, when we talk about the representative town meeting, that's the meeting, the body. But we also have at-large members within the body, and there's some distinctions made in different places.
Well, okay, let me just back up. Matt Kachuk suggested, in his comments, might we consider introducing a short list of abbreviations at the beginning of this act that would allow abbreviations to be used in the interest of brevity? Like select board could simply be SB, town meeting members could be just TMM. So that's kind of one thought that I just wanted to toss out there. But yeah, I mean, maybe I was wrong to refer to it as a representative town meeting. But the representative town meeting is made up of the elected town meeting members and the Board of Selectmen, who are the at-large members.
I guess, are we, for all purposes, are they the same? Like,
The meeting is the meeting.
yeah, But when we're talking about there's a couple of places in the document where we're talking about members, and I think we're specifically talking about the elected town meeting members, distinct from select board members.
I don't know where there's any distinction. I can't think, of
Yeah.
except for the place where they're talking about setting up precincts.
Well, I guess there was a question I had with regard to caucusing. Do
Why don't we
antici-
why don't we wait till we get to that
Okay,
section?
okay, yeah, good idea.
So in section 1, I think, John, maybe you were the one that raised this, somebody did. On page, that's okay, on page 2, there's a sentence, begins kind of mid-page, halfway down, that says, "The select board shall also cause it be posted in the town hall, a map or maps." And somebody suggested we change posted to published/maintain. That was really not so much about the maps as it is the list of registered voters.
Yeah.
Okay, is everybody all right with that one change?
Yep.
I had a question about the sentence before that, where it talks about the registrars of voters. Who are the registrars of voters?
That's,
Is that the Board of Register
yeah,
Yeah,
that are appointed?
those are the ones that are appointed, John?
they're appointed by the select board.
Like Wally Typert's one of them,
Okay,
Mark Valentine?
okay,
Mark
thank you.
Lentini, right.
Okay, anything else in section 1?
I'd like to make a motion that we vote to accept Section 1 as
Amended.
as
Revised.
amended by the chair.
If I could,
Yep,
has the motion been seconded or no?
no.
Not yet.
Okay, before we second it, could I ask, are we going to capitalize representative town meeting members throughout the document? Or town meeting members?
I
Just for
thought,
consistency's sake?
yes, I think it should be, because I felt
Okay.
when we were trying to first read it and understand it, it was so uncertain.
Yeah.
So I think to make them official terms within the act by capitalizing them.
Yeah, so like, just for consistency's sake, do we all agree that that's an approach we should take?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll second that motion then. That's on the floor.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'm just making a note of what John Amita suggested. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So, section 2.
So this is where we change it to 15?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, I know you did not vote in favor of that. Do you want to discuss with us your reason? Or you need the mic?
Oh, thank you. I kind of think that my reasons were kind of said just in the general discussion of limiting participation when we're trying to get more volunteers in other ways, and that's a good intro to town government. Again, I can only speak for my precinct, but we've always had contests, so there didn't seem to be a need, at least in the only numbers I looked at in my section of town. And that having 18 doesn't lead us to be out of whack, so to speak, compared to the other towns. So I just didn't see a necessity in a shift to that. I also, in sort of a separate sense, I also kind of see a political objective at the end of you are asking town meeting to vote away some of themselves. And I don't know if that might get us more no votes when our recommendations go to town meeting. That's not my prime concern, but that was also in the
can
back
see
of my
where it
mind
leads.
of that might be a harder sell than some other changes.
Well, you know, it's really interesting because it might engender just the discussion that we've had so many times of active engagement and participation. You know what I mean? So somebody that stands up to object to that would maybe open the door for such a discussion, right? So it might be, you know, some things are proposed, some questions are asked in order to engage discussion, not so much to stir up a controversy, but as to have people focus on something and talk about it and discuss it. So I think that could be true, and it'd be wonderful, because it would mean people are like, wait a minute, and to talk about why it matters. So
Right.
it could be good.
And people could propose an amendment
Mhm.
to our recommendations to stay at 18. Like, you could even do that if you would.
I would not. I would support our committee's
I
recommendation,
know.
whatever the recommendation is. I might vote no again, but I will support what our committee,
Right.
puts forward. I would not do
I'm
that
just-
at
Okay,
town
I
meeting.
think we should stay on a roll while
Okay,
we're on it.
section two.
Since we already voted on that, and it's sort of
Okay.
a moot point, but.
Do I hear a motion?
Move to
Wait,
accept.
Hold on.
There'll be
We haven't
there'll be
discussed,
discussion after the motion.
okay, but we
Yeah.
haven't
But we haven't
discussed.
done, we haven't talked about what we're, okay, so we're changing the language in there to the 15, because that was the motion we
That
made.
was-
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
But-
okay.
Can I also offer, and this is in the red line that I gave you, but in the sentence that begins the first third, where it talks about how we, the terms of after the first election, I would offer some language to maybe make it a little more clear.
Now, tell me, I just can't find the stuff that you had emailed to me, so if you can remind me.
Okay, yeah, so it's the section, the sentence begins, the first third in order of the votes received,
Where are you again?
in section 2.
Okay, thank you.
So where, after it goes through the first, the second, the third, where it begins, from the day of the annual town meeting, what I would suggest is to add, from the day of the first annual representative town meeting held after election. So that this starts, this division of,
Okay, so this language typically, I don't know if it changes your concept.
Yeah.
But this generally would have happened when town meeting first switched from open to representative. And then
when you get a
when the
new
census changes, if it changes the precincts. So that's first of all.
Yeah.
So it's just, once you have a group of town meeting members elected on the same day for a precinct, how you divvy up which one's the 3-year term to one.
It's not actually from the election? It says from the day of the annual town meeting. It's not from the day of the election?
Because you're sworn in at the town meeting.
Oh, okay.
So tell me again your language.
So that what I would suggest, and again, this is just so I could understand it better, where it says from the day of the annual town meeting, what I added was from the day of the first annual representative town meeting, because that's what we're using the term representative town meeting, held after election.
Okay. Okay. Any other changes people see to section 2? Okay, and we have,
I move to accept section 2 as amended.
I second.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Thank you. Section 3.
I had no further commentary on section 3. I would probably move to accept the amendments as written.
Section, if I could,
Okay?
in section 3, it looks like there's 2 paragraphs in the version I'm looking at. But the sentence that begins, "All town meetings shall be public." Again, just for consistency's sake, all representative town meetings shall be public.
I'm just trying to catch up with where you are.
Kind of in the
Section-
middle of the page.
In the middle of
Yeah,
section
six,
3.
page 6.
All representative town meetings should be public.
Yeah.
Anything else, John?
Not
Anybody
necessary.
else? So, fine, you want to restate your motion?
I would move to accept section 3 as amended.
Do I hear-
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, section 4. And we'll add this to annual town meeting, representative town meeting.
I did have a question. I think we brought this up before, and I think this would be the section that we might add it in if we chose to. Did we want to say that all candidates for town meeting member, whether they are they're initially running or be reelected, be required to get 10 signatures?
My proposal here was to eliminate incumbents not having to have nomination
Oh,
papers.
is that how it's written? I apologize.
No, that's okay. That was my intent.
Okay.
Because the part I crossed out at the top of page 7 is the one that allows for an incumbent to not turn in nomination, or not to, turn in nomination papers.
Apologies, I misread
Sure.
that. That's exactly my concern, so thank you.
Do I hear a motion?
Motion to accept section 4 as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
I
Any
do have-
discussion?
Yeah, I don't, you can ask, this doesn't really, like, I feel like this doesn't say anything about having an incumbent needing nomination papers.
Well, it says, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I may have just been reading it wrong,
Okay.
that nomination of town meeting members
Yeah.
shall be made by nomination papers, which shall bear no political designation, shall be signed by not less than 10 voters of the precinct, and shall be filed with the town clerk at least 10 days before the election, period. So any nomination nomination papers has to have signature of at least 10 voters.
But if you're an incumbent, is it called a nomination again?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, all right.
So we're eliminating the exception that the current
For-
act has.
Right.
We could say that nomination of candidates,
Including incumbents?
to make it
Just
clear.
To make it clear,
That-
because it doesn't feel clear.
No, it doesn't feel clear to me, and I think we know, but I think
Yeah,
Why-
it couldn't help, it couldn't hurt to make it
Right.
more specific. is
It's
what
like when there's an inside joke. We don't want anything here to be an insider thing. We want it to be,
Right.
because remember how hard a time we had the first time we read through I was like, what the heck does this stuff mean?
right.
So nomination of candidates, including incumbents, for town meeting.
Including incumbents up for reelection?
No,
Is that
that's
too
what
much?
incumbent means.
Okay, I'm just trying to be,
Yeah.
trying to be thorough.
No, that's what incumbent is. If you don't know what an incumbent is, like as far as people running, yeah.
Okay, so, any other discussion? And we'll add that including incumbents now. So John, I guess you should remove, or move
Okay,
again.
I'll remove the previous and make a motion to accept section 5 as.
Section 4.
4, I'm sorry. Section 4 as just amended.
Second.
Who was the second? Noah? Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that brings us to 5. And I should be checking Mike's as I'm going through here. I'm sorry. Sorry, Mike. Okay,
So
yes.
if I could, with section 5, the sentence that begins, "All articles in the warrant," I think it's the second sentence of the section. Again, just adding representative town meeting, and then beginning with the first representative town meeting at which said town meeting members serve.
Beginning with the representative at which.
'Cause I-
Instead of our first election.
Yeah, because it just seemed confusing to me the way it was written, so I changed it to serve. And serve is used in a couple of other sections of the,
Okay, so can you tell me your language again?
so all articles in the warrant for any representative town meeting, beginning with the first representative town meeting at which said town meeting members serve. And that's the only changes to that.
I'll tell you, I have a thought about that.
Yeah.
So again, this act was first written with the change from open town meeting to representative town meeting. So that language about beginning with the town meeting at which town meeting members are first elected really, I think, refers to the first representative town meeting that took place. Language doesn't really apply anymore. We don't have to say that it's beginning with that first town meeting or with the town meeting where members are first elected, because they already have been first. I mean, town meeting members have already in the past been elected. I think it's okay to say, all articles in the warrant for any representative town meeting shall be acted upon and determined exclusively by town meeting members. I don't think we have to have that intervening.
Yeah,
No, I think
we can
you're
take
right.
that whole clause out, I
Yep.
agree.
Was that, did she take some of your,
Yeah, yeah, she's,
okay,
yeah.
good.
Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, do we have a motion on 5?
Motion to accept Section 5 as amended?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I just found the stuff you sent to me, John. I'm sorry, I just couldn't find it before.
Oh.
So now we're up to 6.
Yes, so in 6, just the capitalization thing with moderator and moderator pro tempore.
Is there any change from what I was saying about the?
Was there an email from
Section
Pat Fraser
six.
about?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
So I didn't print it out and I can't read on my phone because my eyes, but, did you change, because I brought up what if the moderator was sick that night, there needs to be better language. What is in there? I'm sorry.
I have not changed anything with that issue in mind yet. I asked Pat Fraser, and she sent the answer about what happened the one time this has become an issue in the time that she's been a town meeting member and now moderator. It only happened once. It was with Peter Zuck, who had to be called out of town, so he was going to miss annual town meeting. So it was all kind of set up in advance. So I know one of your ideas, Natalie, was almost like, should we vote on like a vice moderator, like a vice president, who'd fill in if the moderator was unavailable for some reason. And that, to me, I don't, it just feels like it's like that would have to be an elected person, because the moderator is elected. So that opens too many levels of confusion. So I thought, let's see, I'd written down language somewhere. Where did I put it?
Yeah, no, I was thinking like someone, so at least if there was, like a playbook or something available, readily available, not that you had to run to Pat's house and get it like an hour before the meeting, but something that was readily available in the clerk's office, and some idea of who would that person be to stand in, who is qualified enough. Would it be the town clerk? Would it be, I'm not talking about electing another person. I'm talking about who would be the person that we would go to next.
So again,
So would it be the town clerk?
it can't, I mean, it has to be elected by the town meeting. So first of all, we can't preordain who it would be,
Okay.
in my opinion. So I had this idea. Maybe we could add language that says that the moderator pro tem is to be chosen or elected from among the members of the select board, the finance committee, or the precinct captains. And then I thought, well, no, it can't be precinct captains because they're elected or appointed at town meeting by the moderator. So perhaps we could say, if a moderator is absent, a moderator pro tem shall be elected by town meeting from among the members of the select board or the finance committee. I don't think it can be the town clerk.
Yeah, no, that's great. I just, thought that there needed to be something said, not just like elected by the town meeting members, but who's gonna be elected? Who is the person that's elected back? Like, it was very vague to me, that's all.
My only concern was FinCom is appointed, not elected.
So
This is
we
true.
can't use, I don't think we can use them
Okay,
as an option.
I mean, I know we
That's
talked about
fine.
this last time, but reading reading Pat's email, it's kind of, I mean, which I think is what some of us had discussed, like, from her view, not really an issue to be worried about. And the more I think of this, the more I think about leaving it to just town meeting members is probably the easiest.
say it again.
Just leaving it as is.
Oh,
Excuse me. Is your concern like who the moderator pro tempore is going to be? Like,
Yes.
okay, so maybe the way it reads now is that it's elected by town meeting members, but maybe specify that it is a town meeting member,
Yes, that's a good point.
right? Like that
It's-
the moderator,
Because right now it
I
could
don't know
be
how to word
anybody. I could just show up and say, I'd like to be the
Right,
moderator. pro
right.
tem."
yeah, but
And
you'd have
that's
to
what
be
you're getting
elected.
at,
I
is
mean, you'd
like,
have to be
who is
elected.
it?
It's
Like,
not like you just
where
come
does
in
that
and say
person
you're
come
gonna do
from?
it and you step up
Right.
and do
Where
it.
does that
No, but it
person
should be
come
a
from?
town meeting
And
member.
I see.
Yeah.
making sure, yeah, yeah. And then on a sidebar, making sure that, like, something that, so that wouldn't be in here, but that, like, there's actually materials for that person to get at, like, you know. I just think it's a huge position to have something so vague. And not that I'm wishing bad on Pat, but I mean, you know.
Well, maybe
And I
that,
know it hasn't happened yet, but it could happen at any moment that some year she has an issue, like she just had her knee, you know, it could be something. And, or even coming here, she could take an ill turn or something. I mean, there has to just, like, who is the person that's,
Well, here's,
what's the process, I guess, is what I'm
okay.
saying.
So whoever's running a town meeting has to have some familiarity and some comfort with, you know, Robert's Rules of Order, for instance.
Which would be what, the town clerk?
No.
Runs the meeting? Who's,
No,
what are you
the town
talking
clerk.
about, the moderator?
Yes. But the moderator turns to the town clerk for information like, is this a majority vote thing or is this a 2/3 majority vote? So the
Right.
town clerk would be there advising whoever the moderator is, pro tem or not.
Right.
So I don't,
But I'm saying, who is the person? Is it a town meeting member that
so
would be?
I was just suggesting we could perhaps say here that if a moderator is absent, a moderator pro tem shall be elected by town meeting members from among the members of the Board of Selectmen, from the members of the Select Board.
Perfect,
Okay.
yes. I just wanted a little clarification in there, just because, I mean, who is it?
And I wasn't sure of that at first, to tell you the truth, because the Select Board members are voting members of town meeting. So we're removing a voting member and putting them up as the pro tem. But that's part of what a pro tem is. So
Great, thank you.
at least we've identified a group.
Yeah, perfect.
Go ahead.
could we make it more general so that it's not limited to the select board? So that it could just be a member of the body? And that includes the select board, so it could be a select board member.
They would be their town meeting
Right.
members.
Yes.
At that meeting.
Yeah.
Yes, we could.
So
I
rather
thought
than-
that Natalie was looking for something more precise than just that, but yeah, we could.
I mean,
The only thing Pat does talk about, it too important and complex to just have anyone into the event on an absence. And,
Well,
you know,
that's-
not everybody knows the Robert's Rules of
Right,
Order.
and but that was my other
I know.
point that I made too. It was like, who wants to be the, oh, I'll do it. Well, what qualifies you as being able to run such an important meeting and understand Robert's rules, or just even the whole process of the way it is?
What if you had 5 people said they want to do it?
Right, exactly. What is, yeah.
Then the
so-
meeting would vote. They have to vote for it.
Right.
Ask
You have
each
to
one.
get-
Yeah.
That's why I think what you said, Sally, makes common sense about this, rectifying the situation, which is ambiguous, I think.
The fact that they, at that time, voted Dave McKenna, who was on the select board at the time, he was chosen, I think, had he been a moderator at some point? I kind of forget. But anyway, I don't know which is better, to just say it'd be elected from among town meeting members, or it should be elected from among members of the select board.
yeah, I mean, the reason I say the body as a whole is because what if you had a former moderator who stepped down and was now a town meeting member? That person could be the most qualified person in the room, but they're not a selectman. or on the select board, so they couldn't be considered. So that's why I would just think having it more broad, because we don't know what the situation would be.
But as long as it's spelled out is all I care about.
Okay,
I
so,
don't care who it is. I mean, I do care who it is, but I mean, I would hope that the right person would get chosen to run the meeting, but as long as we know who the options are, that's all I'm saying.
okay,
Just-
so
if
let's
I-
just do a quick show of hands before we try to do a motion. Who wants it to be just from among members of the town, from among town meeting members? Who wants it just that? Just from town meeting members, no. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I don't care.
So not the select board?
No.
Okay.
Because select board is part of the board, of the town meeting, so they would be considered.
Yeah,
But
but
it's
I'm-
not automatic that it's gonna be
Yeah,
one of
but,
the.
I thought that they weren't, I thought they're considered something else because they're not voting members, so aren't they like?
They're at
ex-
large.
At large.
Okay. All right, so you're including them
Yeah.
in that?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought that should be spelled out with saying select board or, but that's fine. If they're considered, I just don't think that anybody reading this would maybe make that association that they are actually,
Oh, yeah, I thought it was gonna be different. So, if they're part of that town meeting, then yes.
Okay, so how about if we just say from among the town meeting members?
yeah, that's fine.
And should we be saying shall be elected instead of may be elected?
Why?
Oh, as in, it's possible versus it will happen.
Yes.
Well, the
Like you
thing
can't be
is,
anybody else.
they're telling you the reason I put in shall is if we
Oh,
get,
you
if,
didn't- No, it says may.
it says may, and I changed it to
Oh,
shall.
you did? Not, oh, sorry, I don't have that.
It's okay.
Okay.
Oh, because I guess I did that after I gave this to you guys, sorry. I suggested shall
So
because if we're at a meeting, the moderator doesn't show
We
up.
agree with shall.
Okay,
We just had may and didn't have shall. so
okay.
we're good.
So, do I have a motion?
Move that the committee accept Section 6 as amended.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. 7.
Sally, I had one.
Sorry
I had
about that.
one suggestion under 7. So on page 9, the third and fourth line, in black, it's purpose of filling any vacancy, then in red, said special meeting, this is the caucus, said special meeting to be conducted immediately before the annual town meeting. We also do that at special town meetings, if somebody has moved and there's a vacancy. Or at least I believed that we had. You can correct me if I'm wrong, and so I wasn't sure if we wanted to do any town meeting, not just the annual
Yeah,
one.
Yeah, if I
Yeah.
could follow up on that, I would recommend taking that clause out as well, because, yeah, for that reason, or we might want to do it separate and apart from a town meeting, like, I don't know, it might be that there's a desire to do it at any time, so why limit ourselves to just the annual town meeting?
Well, now, the purpose of this is that if there's not sufficient, if the 15 members have not been, if a precinct only has 13 town meeting members, that this would allow for a meeting just before the town meeting to caucus. This was one of those provisions within the act that was so confusing when we first read it, so I was trying to clarify that there could be a caucus just before a town meeting so that additional town meeting members could be elected for that precinct. So I think we need to have it in here,
But why does it have to be limited to before the meeting?
because that's when you need them.
Right, but if someone moves out of town in the middle of the year and you know you're gonna have a vacancy, could you do it then?
We would have to have a town election? I mean,
No. Like,
Well, you'd have to
could you
call.
call a caucus at a different time? If we didn't limit ourselves to this, it has to be right before the meeting. Could you do the caucus the day before, or, like if people
2
can't
months
make it?
before.
Yeah, if
Yeah,
people
we-
can't make it in, like whatever, people's schedule. You wanted to do it a week before or something.
Well, no, like,
To
people
call the
have to be
caucus.
there, if they're gonna be at town meeting, they're gonna be at town meeting.
So you can
That's
have-
when you have to do it.
And why-
Like,
Right, but if they
meaning-
can't be there till right when town meeting starts, usually these happen an hour before. Like, I don't know why we would limit ourselves to, it has to happen on,
trying to eliminate
Because you
the
could
number
have,
of meetings a person has to go to, I
and you could
guess.
have another opening, you could have your meeting a month ahead, and then
Yeah, yeah, that
2
could
weeks
happen.
before,
Yeah.
you have another, opening, because someone passed or moved away, so now you still have to caucus again, so.
But if, let's say you didn't have, let's say you didn't have a quorum, right? Because don't you need a quorum in the caucus?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you couldn't have a quorum on the day of the meeting, for
Then you-
whatever reason.
Then you'd be missing a town meeting member. I
Yeah, and
guess.
you'd be short.
I mean,
I-
we could say it should be conducted immediately before any town meeting, or it could be conducted no later than, or say it'll be conducted
Prior
immediately
to.
before any town meeting or any other date as agreed by the priest. I mean, it just seems very cumbersome.
I guess my question is, can the other town meeting members get together outside, like, can the 13 get together just somewhere and elect 2 other people, or does someone else have to be
I
there?
don't think so, because.
Well, that's what a caucus is
Well-
it's,
I know, so
Yeah.
it can just be done.
Well,
Well, yeah, but it doesn't,
um,
there was a whole procedure, like when we did it right, then you have to go bring it to,
The town clerk,
right.
Yeah, but
and that person has
yes,
to be
but it
sworn in.
also has to be, I would think, posted, because you're an elected official, you're having a meeting, wouldn't you have to post it, that you're having the meeting, because you're taking a vote?
yeah.
Wouldn't have to be open to the public?
I mean, it would seem to me that, let's say we're talking about precinct 3, my precinct, the town meeting members who are already in the precinct could decide, months before, oh, let's all agree that so-and-so, and let's approach that person, ask them if they'll come with us to that meeting, we'll elect you that night. It just seems like a lot to impose having a town meeting member from a certain precinct have to attend multiple meetings before town meeting. And we're already having a hard enough time getting people to come to town meeting prepared. So I'm just concerned about telling them they have to do it some other time, other than at that night we're already meeting anyway.
right, but I'm not saying that this is, like, I'm just saying, why are we limiting ourselves to that? Like, the way that this is written is, it's limiting us, this can only happen in this way immediately before a town
So
meeting.
no later than?
Sally,
What if you just
I may,
eliminate the word immediately?
I think it's done right before town meeting, and it has to, and I mean, it's required that way, so that if you want to be a member, you know when you show up. And it's not 3 PM on a Tuesday that you didn't get notice of until 3:05 PM on a Tuesday.
But you're required to get notice prior, 5 days prior,
For this.
no matter when the like if we.
Well,
we
that's
open it
true,
to
but
interpretation.
not everybody in precinct 5 gets something in the mail. Only the town meeting members get something 5 days in the mail. And so if somebody wanted to show up to be caucused in, if it's always the same, and they know there's an opening, they know when to show up. Like, it's just sort of a consistency that it's not a suddenly changed at the last minute, and they wanted to get one person in, and so they kind of do it that way.
That's true.
I found it, having done it 3 times, is just a really efficient way of filling that spot.
Plus, these town meeting members elected in this way are unique because they weren't elected by the
voters.
residents, the voters in their precinct. They're being voted by other town meeting members.
Right.
So, and before, when we first read this language, it was talking about special meetings, isn't it? Well, when does that happen? And we were like, oh, yeah, that's the thing right before town meeting starts.
I would just delete the word annual, and I would be satisfied, meaning that it would be either an annual or a special, but it has to be right before a town meeting, which would conform with current practice.
Right.
So how about if, John, I feel bad, I feel like we're just kind of kicking your idea out, but
No,
it's
no, that's
just,
fine.
it's,
Not every idea is a good idea. so.
so,
They're not all gonna work.
so if we want to, I mean, we could vote on it both ways if you'd like.
No, that's fine, that's fine.
So,
But I do think we should take out annual, I agree.
Yes, yeah.
so I'm suggesting we change it to
There's the happy medium.
said special meeting to be conducted immediately before any town meeting,
Yes.
or before the next town meeting or something, because it all is triggered by the town clerk advising the town meeting members that there's a vacancy.
Yeah,
Or before a town meeting.
But before
Before the-
said
yeah.
town meeting.
One other question on this, and I don't know if it matters that much, but since we're changing it from 18 to 15, do we change the petition therefore signed by not less than 10 town meeting members? Do we change that at all, or do we just leave it at 10? We'll leave it at 10.
Just leave it at 10.
All right, good. We'll leave it at 10.
That's a nice number.
It is. It's a great number.
See, this happens at town meeting too, that towards the end you get going faster and faster.
It's right. Yeah, it's fine.
So again, the change from what I had typed in earlier was that said special meeting to be conducted immediately before said town meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to
Could you
accept.
hold on, John?
What's that?
Could we hold on a second?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was-
A couple sentences forward, I just had a question. Where it says, "At said meeting, a majority of the town meeting members from such precinct shall constitute a quorum." This is the caucus thing. Do select board members who happen to live in that precinct get to participate in the caucus? Okay, so we might want to clarify that.
Where are we here?
Where it says,
yeah.
"At the said meeting,
Majority.
a majority of the town meeting members from such precinct shall constitute a quorum."
So representative town meeting members? Would that, but, right? Would that?
Yeah, but they're not voting members, right?
No, they
Yes,
are.
the select board are, but
But are they-
they're at large.
They're at
Yeah, they're
large.
at-large
I-
members, so we're saying at-large members can't participate in the caucus.
Well, I don't,
Or
well,
is-
is it necessary to put in there? They know they
Do
don't.
we think that,
I don't think it's an issue, but I mean, we
Yeah.
could say at-large members don't have a right to vote at caucus, I mean, if you'd like.
But are they considered representative town meetings?
Yeah.
Town meeting members, even though they are at large?
yeah, 'cause
Well-
we're calling it representative town meeting throughout the document, so it
Right.
gets confusing.
Right, like, does
So-
that include town,
Yeah.
select board?
Select board members are at-large members of the representative town
Okay,
meeting.
So they are
Okay,
part of
yeah.
representative town meeting.
But I added language earlier in one of the sections that town meeting members, when they're elected to represent their precinct. So I think it's clear that town meeting members
'Cause it says
from
such-
such precinct constitute the quorum.
I don't know, I'd just hate for some selectmen to show up and be like, wait a minute,
Can't
I'm from
imagine a
this
selectman
precinct.
doing that, but-
I don't know.
So shall we say a majority of the town meeting members elected from such precinct? But then we're using elected in all these different ways in
yeah,
the same.
Yeah, I
So
guess, how
I'll
do we
just say-
refer to the,
Just add a sentence, at-large members,
Select board members excluded? I don't know.
You could say you could say at the said meeting, a majority of the town meeting members excluding
Select board.
select board, or excluding at-large members, comma, from such a precinct. So just have a little clause in there, I guess. It's not the most beautifully worded sentence, but the editor in me is cringing, but.
and then, continuing in that sentence, where it says that the precinct members.
remember your mic,
Oh, I'm
Jonathan.
sorry. Where it says the precinct members shall elect from their own number a chairman and clerk. Do we want to keep that, or do we want to just have that, like, the moderator tag someone the way they do it?
No, that's different.
This is for
This is
the.
different.
No, I
This
know,
is-
but do we want to keep it this way? Like, just to save time when you're dealing with a caucus, should we do something more abbreviated by having the town moderator say, like, okay, you're the,
My experience,
see.
telling you 3 times, is it's never been a problem. You know, usually someone just steps up and says, I'll do it.
I
All right,
think-
I'll do it.
I don't know
Okay.
that we need
And
a
it-
chairman
it
and a
gets-
clerk.
it gets
They
done.
do-
Yeah, you have to
run a
count 'em.
meeting. The
Yeah.
caucus
Right.
is a meeting, so
Right.
you need someone to run the meeting, so you would have to have a chair,
Chair,
and you'd
alright.
have the clerk. The clerk would be the person that would count the votes that you're taking at the caucus.
Yeah, it has to be kind of
So,
official.
and
Once
both
you
of
get
them
to
count the
town-
ballots in this, the way it's written.
Right.
And once you get into town meeting and the town moderator makes someone the precinct captain, that's different than this chair.
It
So-
wouldn't,
Right.
it wouldn't already be elect, that chair would not already be.
No, it's
been-
different.
Right.
Okay, so I just bring it up, if
Yeah.
anyone doesn't think it's an issue, then it's not an issue, but.
It doesn't say what kind of paper the ballot should be on.
Or what color. Just
But so I guess, so I'm kind of serious, but I assume this means that it must be a written ballot.
Yeah.
Okay, so
It's
it's not
the
like
form that
yeah.
the town clerk provides. Okay. Anything else?
I'll make a motion to accept Section 7 as amended.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so, Section 8.
I just have one question on that, right at the beginning, and I could just be reading this improperly, but no vote except a vote to adjourn or authorizing the borrowing of money in anticipation of the receipt of taxes for the current year passed at any representative town meeting shall not be operative until after the expiration of 5 days?
No, it says no vote shall be operative until,
Shall be, okay, right, that would be a double negative. Thank you.
I have one question. Why are Saturdays included in the 5 days, but not Sundays and holidays?
It's just the way it's under state law, most, like when you're
It's a state law,
counting.
okay.
I don't know if it is a state law, but so many state laws that talk about how many days from the day you serve somebody can you take the next step, and generally Saturdays count and Sundays and holidays don't. It's just,
Okay.
Fireworks
so Section 8.
during a drought?
yeah, so
Seriously?
with the 4%, does anyone think that's kind of low?
This is in Section 8?
Yeah.
I wrote
With-
that down too, and now I can't find the 4%, John. Can you help me find it again?
Yeah,
I was
so
looking
in,
at that.
in Section 8,
Within said 5 days, a petition signed by not less than 4%.
There we go.
Yep.
Continuing, yeah.
Do
I mean-
we know where that 4% came from, or the logic behind that number?
No, I do not.
I would say from my experience as one of the people trying to collect signatures for the CPA to get it on the ballot, if I'm remembering, it was 5%, and that took us like 6 months. So, so I don't know what number 4% is, but I actually can't imagine in 5 days that being accomplished. That actually sounds kind of high to me. I mean, it should be high, like,
yeah, yeah.
like in a fine, correct kind of high way.
You wonder what the population was when that was put in. Like, how much was 4% of registered voters then compared to now?
Well, it was still 4% of whatever the number was. I mean, so it's still the same
But I
amount
mean,
of.
if you, just as a really small number, if your 4% is
Basically
100
veto
people,
something.
it's much easier to get 100 signatures than it is to get 4,000.
Well,
Just in 5 days, just as a,
That's a lot. Yeah, 4% of registered voters of town.
Right.
right.
So,
Pretty big number.
and actually, the number of, our, at least the number of residents, which is different than the number of registered voters,
Right.
has stayed strikingly the same over years.
Right.
So, anyway, so this is actually, would be citizens working to overturn something the town meeting had just
Right.
voted on.
Right.
so it has to be high.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm fine with it. Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it.
I was just wondering if there was I was just
I don't
more
know,
interested in the
yeah.
reasoning of where that 4% came from. If
Yeah.
there was some reasoning behind it, but that seems reasonable to me.
Okay, do I have a motion?
May I ask one other question?
Yes.
The word substantially at the bottom of page 10 seemed kind of vague to me in terms of it says it would, the questions so submitted shall be stated upon the ballot in substantially the same language and form in which they were stated. To me, that suggested it opened the door for somebody to rephrase it, and I'm sure there's a reason why that might be appropriate, but I'm wondering why, and I'm wondering if there's any concern about a word that seems as vague to me as substantially being there.
Well, one idea that comes to mind for me is that when we're voting on something at town meeting, it's in the form of a warrant article. And so there could be, if they're restating it onto a ballot, that they might just need to change the, I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah.
Okay. If we don't think it's a concern, I'm absolutely fine with moving on. It just occurred to me, and I wanted to get your opinions.
I'll make the motion to accept Section 8, I think as is. Is that correct, Sally? Were there any amendments to that section?
Well, except the redlined ones. I mean, I don't,
Okay, fine, to accept any amendments to Section 8.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so now we are officially 8 o'clock, just a moment or two. We still have 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Do you want to keep going, or should we call it a night?
I'd like to keep going a little bit.
I don't have any substantive additions for the next sections.
I
If other
don't
folks
either.
do, then, I mean, if we don't, we can crank through it.
We
I
might
think.
be able to just crank through them
Get through it.
if we, like, stick to important comments.
Well, then I did have a question, section 9. Thereafter, at each annual town meeting, 3 members of said committee for the FinCom
What-
shall be, this is about finance committee being appointed by the moderator.
Mhm.
At each annual town meeting, 3 members of said committee shall be appointed by the moderator to serve for 3 years therefrom. Does that
Mhm.
happen?
No.
Okay, should we get rid of it?
Well, no, I think we still want it. The moderator is to appoint, and they're supposed to be 3-year terms.
So she must renew
Mhm.
potentially the terms. So, you know, if your
So-
3-year term is up and she wants you to continue, she must renew you
Mhm.
at that point. So maybe that's what that's stating.
Right, it's just not usually, I've never seen it done at the annual
Well,
town meeting. Yeah.
Oh, it wouldn't necessarily be done at town
It
meeting.
wouldn't happen at town
No.
meeting.
It's
Right.
just like the,
Happened by the moderator, but not
Right.
at town meeting.
It
right,
just says at each annual town meeting.
just like the vote that would establish this committee, the moderator chose the members, but she didn't do it that night.
Right, it just says that that's when it would be
Hmm.
done. So I didn't know if we should just eliminate that.
Oh, at the first annual town meeting.
At each
At
annual
each
town.
annual town meeting, it
Yeah,
says, yeah.
it says.
Mine says first, so, but I think each
Oh,
makes
okay.
sense.
Maybe it should say,
Oh, maybe not, because that would, some of
Right,
them
because-
are 3 years, so that.
But yeah, if we don't do that, then I feel like we should just take it out.
Unless she does it privately at the beginning of the
Yeah, I
meetings
think-
and
I
we
feel
just
like-
don't know about
right,
it.
It's not,
maybe.
because it doesn't have to be voted on. It's her
Right.
appointment.
It's her
Right.
appointment, so it doesn't really, matter. Okay.
Okay.
I had nothing on 9.
That's all I have.
So 9, 10, 11, shall we do all
Well-
3 of them together?
11,
Okay, so let's just do 9 then.
Okay, motion to accept section 9.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So let's go to 10. And there, I didn't have any changes.
no.
So do we have a motion? Well, we're not really changing anything, so we don't really need a
Yeah, we
motion
don't
to.
have to do anything, yeah.
Say motion to accept as is.
Yeah. There should be a motion to.
So you're making that motion?
Yes, motion to accept section 9 as written.
10.
10.
10, yeah.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So that brings us to 11.
Do we need 11?
That's what I was wondering.
Like, can we just get, it was put in to establish the first representative town meeting, and we're not doing that anymore. It's been established.
Since we're remaining with representative town meeting, can
Right.
it be eliminated? That's what I was wondering. as
Yeah.
well.
The one thing, though, is that this section establishes, I think it's this section, establish the fact that the vote of town meeting binds the town and activates the action that town meeting takes. So it's almost like an authority and an acknowledgement section.
Isn't that kind of what this whole thing is, though?
But this is a specific statement that the town of Danvers acts through and is bound by town meeting. So it's important. It's like every year at town meeting, we take that vote to allow the town, the tax collector to collect taxes. It's
Yeah.
like there has to be an action that authorizes town meeting to be the entity that votes and acts on behalf of the town. So I think it's necessary.
Okay.
So we have a motion?
Motion to accept section 11.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. And 12, this is the one where, again, in my language, I was just tossing this out for discussion, was that we would hold an annual town meeting followed by the election. And we decided earlier tonight that I should consult with the town clerk on this question.
Yes.
Yeah,
maybe
can we
we'll-
put a pin in this one?
Yeah.
Table,
Revisit this.
table section 12. I'd like to make a motion that we table section 12
I'll second
for
that.
further
Yeah.
discussion.
I'll second that.
Because I don't know if I had already mentioned this, I think I did, but I also would like to, as part of this, talk about the section that says, if said business of the annual town meeting is not completed in the first evening, we would adjourn and go on as many evenings as to complete, right? So one of my biggest complaints since I've been a town meeting member is every single time we have something of controversy or significant importance to some people in town, it is saved for the last warrant article of the night. And it's rushed through, and everybody's handing the badges and talking and getting coats on, and that to me is a travesty of democracy when that happens every single time. So I would like to somehow say that if, instead of rushing through, then, and it's getting late or whatever, or for whatever reason, things get rushed in the end, that we go by this sentence and we say, okay, well, this is important coming up, and we don't want to rush through this, so let's go to another night or strike that completely, because
Well, it's kind of interesting because one possibility here is, you hear generally it's the more seasoned town meeting members will say, point of order, point of order. Somebody could get up and raise this section of the Town Meeting Act allows us to go to another night. This matter is so important.
well, and honestly, if I had known this, I would have been doing it all along.
Yeah.
But because I didn't know about this, I didn't know it was an option.
But there isn't a time limit on town meeting as it is now. We could be debating until midnight. And then
that's what
at
I
that
was
point,
wondering.
They can then say, then we should continue this to the next night. So there isn't like, we have to be out by 10 or 10:30.
No, I understand that.
So it's the discussions that drive how long we're there talking. So again, people are tired, but these are important topics, so.
Right.
So.
And are those people gonna come back the second night?
That's right, you'd lose people. So why don't we have that be part of our
Yeah,
table
let's-
discussion after
yeah,
I have a little bit more? So that brings us to 13.
I have nothing on 13.
Make a motion to accept 13.
Second?
And that was you, Noah?
It was.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So that brings us to 14, which is the review period. And we had talked before, I had suggested 20. The discussion, at least some members, was to do 10. Why don't we vote on it as, if somebody would like to so move, that we vote on it with the 10 and see if that passes, and then if not, we'll vote on it with the 20. Does that make sense?
Yep, I make a motion for section 14 for it to be reviewed at least once every 10 years.
I second that motion.
Any discussion?
Yes, I would vote no only to indicate my preference for 20, just as the point of the vote.
And I would as well. I think the wording currently, as you amended it, I believe, the 20 years or sooner allows the opportunity to review it sooner than that, but I think 10 years seems a bit too demanding on the body to review.
I mean, I feel that way too, more because it's driven by the census, which is only every 10 years. So we'd have 2 under our belts before the town picks this up again. But which is one of the reasons that I had specifically included or sooner. So,
The motion's on the table, so we
Yeah.
take a vote
Mm-hmm.
and see what happens.
so everyone in favor of it with the 10-year caveat as Mary Beth proposed? Why don't I just do hands, because I won't be able to. Who likes this? So it's one, I should write this down.
Okay, so it doesn't-
Yeah.
Nova.
There's
You
only the
don't-
three
you
of
don't
us, it
have to-
doesn't, yeah.
You don't have to write down. Just-
Okay, so let's go back to the 20 years. Do I have a motion?
I would make the motion of it, section 14, as written.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No. Say no since I already.
Well, you can, you can.
I
you
know,
can
it
still-
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I know, but you can still
Your vote
vote it
counts.
if you want.
Oh, if I could, in this section, just like cleaning up a little maybe,
15?
in 14, sorry. At an annual or special meeting. Like, why are we limiting it to, like, the town meeting could, like, it says every 20 years or sooner as requested by a vote of the town meeting members at an annual meeting.
Or a special.
Or a special.
Right.
So we're not limiting it, we're kind of keeping
Okay,
it wide open.
my red line, okay, my red lines are messed up. Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, so 15, it probably doesn't need to be quite in the way I've done it here, because I tried to confirm with Pat Fraser what the process is. So I think the way it should read is that this act shall be submitted to town meeting. No,
Right, because it's not to the town. They're not voting on it, right?
yes, but I'm a little concerned about that, because this deals, well, maybe it's not an issue, because the town voted way back in the beginning, in 1930, to delegate its authority to town meeting, so I guess that's okay. But the way it's gonna work is, I think I need to rework 15, so why don't we table that for now, too?
Then we'll leave 16, because that's sort of related.
Yeah.
Yes, because I think that if town meeting, I mean, I suppose we could still have some concept like this, that it would be submitted to town meeting, and it could, and if they vote it down, it could be submitted to them a second and a third time. I don't know if that makes any sense to do or not.
Well,
If-
as I read Pat's email, I think the town meeting vote comes first, so it wouldn't be in the legislation. It wouldn't get to the point of legislation if we didn't vote, if we didn't approve it as a town meeting.
Right. So the
Right.
question is,
Right.
let's say town meeting rejects it at the meeting when this is presented to them. Do we want to have a clause like the current one, the last section here, that then allows for it to come back to be presented to them again, a second and a third time?
But I don't think we need that in this. I think that would be like in the warrant maybe,
Yeah, it's more procedural.
like it's, right?
Yeah. So we'll just delete it. Let's vote. I shouldn't say let's just, it's not up to me. So is there a motion?
Are we eliminating that section? Is that what the motion?
So we don't
Yeah.
eliminate section 16?
Yeah.
Okay, motion to eliminate section 16.
Second?
So Noah moves, John seconds. Any further discussion?
No,
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No,
Does that mean you're opposed?
I'm opposed to eliminating it. Want to go back real quick. I know we already voted on it, but on 12, Natalie, to your point. I don't know, it might not be put into 12 anyways, but they can number those warrant articles in a certain order. Which I think at our last town meeting, they did bring something closer to the front that was a little bit of a hot topic. Can't remember really, but those recommendations could be made prior to town meeting.
Yeah,
So
they're-
whether it's made at a select board meeting, because they're the ones that come up with the warrants, or at FinCom, where a recommendation could be to hold this particular at an earlier number in the meeting so that more time can be given. So I do feel that that is a request that could be made. I don't think it's something we put in here because it gets wordy and all, but it is something that could be made at a request.
Would the,
Could be among the comments that we share. Among the many topics we discussed, one was,
Okay, great.
Sally?
So at the next meeting, are we going to, we'll discuss the recall, our notes that we made for the recall petition?
I did, thank you for reminding me of that. I did reach out to, is it Mike Trainer?
Yes.
Yep.
yeah,
To invite him to our next meeting, because I thought tonight we might be tied up with other things. So he will come, so we can talk about it.
Good.
And you know, since this act has that language that allows for citizens to overturn something the town meeting did, I think it's okay for us to include a recall provision in, I'm not sure yet which of the two acts, but maybe, I'm kind of torn as to which act it should be in, but I think it's okay for us to insert it in one of these. And it might be town manager more appropriately, because though the town manager couldn't be recalled, the board of selectmen would have to take action. But all the other positions in the town are kind of spelled out in the town manager act, so it might make sense there. So everybody can give that a little bit of thought. But next meeting will be Mr. Trainer.
And also, Sally, just make sure we kind of bring to final discussion the presentation, the proposal that I had, so we can decide if, and we want to do anything with that.
Thank you.
I'm gonna say it's separate from last time.
What were you
Sally,
saying?
if I could make a motion to, I guess, authorize the chair to make such edits to clean up the document
Oh, thank you.
with, you know, so we don't have to go back.
Recreate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like the capitalization things that we talked about. So
Okay.
I'd make that motion. If someone could
Thank you,
second.
John.
I second that.
No. Yep, Nova did.
5 seconds. Okay, any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sally.
Okay, so what's homework for next week, or next time?
So
Which is when?
if you want
When
to,
is the next
the next meeting is the 20th
Okay.
at the senior center. So I would suggest everybody take a peek at the recall language. I will try to get this modified document emailed to everybody. I think I can do that without violating the open meeting law, don't you?
As
Yep,
long as we don't discuss
as long
it,
as
you're
we don't
just sending
discuss it.
it.
So that you
send
all,
it to us.
so you have a chance to see it, and maybe we'll take a final vote. And then, I would also appreciate if people would start going through the Town Manager Act in the same way.
yeah, all right.
Motion to adjourn?
Any second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So it's 8:18.
Good
Cold in here.
work.
See y'all?